Hi.
Oh, hi, long time no see.
Yes, it's been like a week. How are you feeling?
I know. Good. Our team just left for El Salvador last week, and so they're seeing like
Oh,
thousands of people get saved, and some of us are sick, so my voice sounds like pretty bad right now, but we're
are
getting
you sick
through
because
it.
you went on a trip or are you sick just cause?
Well, our outreach team got back, and a lot of them were sick, and so we got whatever they have,
Yeah,
and we're pushing through. So.
that's crazy. But what are you feeling? It's like your nose, your throat.
I think it's just like a cold. Um, it's community living, and so it's if one person gets sick, a lot of people get sick.
Yeah.
Just happens like that.
You don't live alone?
Yeah, I think it's just no.
Mm.
I have I have housemates here at this house, and then our mission base is like 10 steps away from this house, and that's where like a lot of people live. All of our missionaries and staff,
That's
so
crazy.
that aren't married.
I live with four other girls, and it's the same thing. If one of them are sick, the rest of them are getting sick as well. So I get it.
Just
Yeah, and it's just like, why, why? And it's crazy because I feel like the people that are like doing the really intense call of God are the ones that are always getting sick. It's like, why?
yeah, I we helped a church too, and yeah, it could just be spiritual warfare, you know. Thousands are getting saved in El Salvador. So, I mean, just you never know. It's a
True.
question for
So what did they do going down to El Salvador? Like, what are they doing there?
so they learned a dance performance. So it's a street dance, and then they'll do a drama called Doors. And so they're in like this amphitheater thingy. Look, and there was like over hundreds of people watching this show. And
No.
so it's four doors, and you have the main characters, Jesus and the Seeker. And so the Seeker is created, right, by God. And then these like doors are opening up. Like you have the option. You could do drugs, you could have these
Yeah.
relationships, you could like fall into this stuff. But the whole time Jesus is pursuing her, like, no, you don't want that, you don't want that.
Yeah.
But the Seeker then sought out the wrong things and hit rock bottom. And then in the drama, I don't know what you would call it. Like, there's no words. So a skit, a
Yeah.
skit.
Without words. Yeah.
Um, and so then Jesus like goes and grabs the seeker, and the sin like comes in, tries to separate them. But then overall, Jesus dying on the cross.
Yeah.
They'll like play that out. That defeats sin, and they have a relationship again.
So
And
they're
then
doing that on
someone
the
goes on the mic. Yeah, on the streets.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
I'm seeing the stories that our Instagram is posting, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
I wish I could go. I would go to El Salvador in a second.
Hey, we're planting a base there, so there's a way
Yeah.
for you to get there.
Yeah, I guess for everybody that's listening, do you want to explain just like because you're talking about a base, you're talking about we sent out missionaries, they're going to El Salvador. Do you want to explain like a little bit of like your name, what you do, and then also like what you mean by your base? And because I know what you're talking about, but I feel like people listening are like, what does she mean on base?
Like, where? Yeah, so my name is Abigail. I'm a full-time missionary stationed in Somerville, Massachusetts, like 10 minutes from Boston, the city. And we're with Youth with a Mission. So our base like logo per se is to be a launch pad for world missions and spark revival in New England. And so Youth with a Mission is a massive missions organization across the globe. Lauren Cunningham had this vision for young people to be trained up and to go to preach the gospel. And Lauren Cunningham himself went to every single nation, which is so crazy to think about. And so he kind of left like this. He passed away last year, but he kind of left this standard of being ruined for the ordinary. Like God's plan is for all people to get to know Him, and how are they going to know without someone going to tell them? And so
Yeah.
I work with this base here, as I was mentioning. Missioning. That's so funny. So funny. I live on our campus, and so what I was mentioning about our base, having a lot of people, community living, we host schools, we run training schools here, Bible schools here. So there's always people coming through um, with living with a lot of people. So, but I love it. So awesome. And I've been here for 4 years now. So
Yeah.
originally from Florida, so I'm not a New Englander. So just
Originally from Florida?
yes.
That's crazy. We're in Florida.
An hour north of Tampa. So I'm actually headed there this weekend and I'm very excited.
No way. How far were you from Miami?
That's like about 6 hours.
Oh, so you're like the opposite because I'm 40 minutes from Miami. That's crazy. What are you
Oh,
going to
really?
do down here?
I'll be attending a wedding, and so that's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
And
that's
then time with my family while I'm down there. I'm currently helping staff a school, so I can't be gone for too long. But just going for the weekend to be there for the wedding. Some close people that I'm with. So
we
awesome.
actually have a school from Tampa. It's called, I don't know if you've ever heard of SCU. They actually have like a group right now in Miami. They're doing like missions work there and like literally this week. I don't know when they're leaving, but yeah. So that's crazy. Maybe you'll be able to see them. But yeah, so for anybody like wondering that's listening, I was on Instagram one day and then I saw Abigail's reel of how she was like, oh, it was something like when they tell me to book a flight for missions and then you literally just book it like right away. It was like something along those lines. And I was like, that's crazy because I have a call to be a missionary, you know? And when I saw that, I was like, I need to reach out to Abigail because I want to share to people who feel like they have a missionary call about how to like identify that and how to just walk in faith to be able to go and live a missionary life. Because you see in Acts, you see Paul going everywhere, you see the disciples going everywhere. But a lot of times people are like, yeah, I know that my call is a missionary, but I don't have the money to go. I don't have the circumstances to go. I don't have this. And you were even telling me stories of one time when you went to Brazil. And I really want this episode to be for people who just feel like they have a call to missions, but they're kind of like afraid, but also like
Mm,
uncertain of how to make that work. And when we had called last week, something that you told me that has been stuck in my heart is that like where you are already is a mission field. And so I want to
yes.
definitely touch upon that in this episode as well of how you can make and go about making the place you are your first mission field and what you can do there, and then maybe expanding into like how to go into the nations. But the first thing I want to like ask you is, and for you to share, is how did you determine that missions was your call? And yeah, how
Mm,
did you start like that? Because now you're working for the base, you go on missions, you're traveling the world. And I know that it's not just you that's wanting to do that. You know, there's people that are called to be missionaries, people that are called to go out and come back, like myself. And so I definitely want to know your story. Like, how did you end up finding that mission, being a missionary was your calling for the season?
mm. Great question. I'll just start it off with kind of like the way God has designed us in our original design. Something that I really love looking back throughout my childhood and high school years, like something that I've always loved was like speaking to my stuffed animals. This is so silly, but I'm just hanging there for a second. So like I would line up my stuffed animals and I'll just like speak to them or read a story to them. Or in high school, I would be friends with pretty much every single group. Because even as a non-Christian, I would just like fit in with literally every single group. And so the enemy can like twist that to being like you're never true to yourself. But God has made me to be comfortable in every single type of group. Like I just relate so well. And I wasn't a Christian then, and now being a Christian, I have this comfortability of sitting in a Sikh home and just like talking to them like fully comfortable, and just random houses I end up in or villages I end up in, just so comfortable overseas. And it's because that's how God has made me. And I've always loved to travel. And so it's like, oh, being on flights all the time is not an issue because I've always loved this. And so, yeah, once I got saved after high school, I was like going to my church, learning commandments of God, learning how to have a relationship with God, and that was so important. And then I just felt this call towards more, right? And so for you too, you're feeling this like there's something more, right? And
Yeah.
so then I found YWAM on Facebook and had no idea what I was getting into, to be honest with you. I just went because the Lord was just, guiding me. And when I was preaching the gospel in this closed nation, I was just like seeing the eyes light up in this village, not hearing, they haven't heard Jesus like ever in this village. And something like even in the school, like here in Boston campus, I heard these statistics of like this many people haven't heard about Jesus. This is like the money that's going into the mission field from churches, which is like below bare minimum of what people are funding missions from churches. And I'm just sitting there like this like righteousness, I would say, kind of like the Lord's heart for his people to be reached, just was like stirring up in my heart of like, we have to do something about these numbers. There is no way, like same with like adoption, that's like a whole nother story. But just like these things are rising up about like, we have to do something as Christians or as followers of Jesus. This cannot remain the normal. And
Yeah.
so going against all odds and just like going out in faith, the Lord has opened so many doors. And I just like when I was in this closed nation, that's when I realized my mission call was, wow, this people group hasn't heard of Jesus. We just brought Jesus to this unreached people group. And I knew right then that's what I'm called to do like the rest of my life. And there's nothing that would change that. And do I think I'll be in full-time missions when I'm like 30s, 40s? Like, will I be like on monthly support like my whole life? I have no idea. But what I'm doing with what I have now is what's in front of me and leading up others, training them up, to reach that reach. And so where to begin and to kind of unpack your question a bit, say like I'm going back in the day, like what's next, right? And what I would have done is start where I was at. I think sometimes even missionaries, I could speak for a lot of our missionaries, sometimes like we don't think about our next door neighbor, or we're so focused on going to like Saudi Arabia, we're so focused on going to these places, but our call is to go and preach the gospel to all people. And so when we're on like our off season per se, or like if we go on comp time, meaning we just got back from an outreach, now it's time to just like chillax, right? We don't have the excuse or like the whatever to not preach the gospel if God calls us to down the street. And so I would encourage people that feel like they have a missions call to like really ask the Lord, one, where are you at? What family are you in? Like all these things, what has God made you for? What are some of your gifts, right? Like what do you like to do? You like to sing? Do you like to dance? Like I'm sure there's opportunities near you that you could give that to the Lord and say, do as you wish and pursue him with your talents as well. So I think that kind of answers a little like one and a half of your questions.
That's really good. I love to share the story so much. When I first became Christian in 2020, I was listening to a sermon. This was like a
Nice.
long time ago. And he was saying, he was like, because I remember like I never thought there was anything super good about me. Like I never thought I could pinpoint something in my life or in myself that was like good enough to like have a career or to like be liked by, like I had really bad outlook of myself because of my upbringing. And I remember in this sermon, he was like, what is one thing, like one strong suit that you have in yourself? And I remember just thinking, I talk a whole lot. Like I can talk for hours. I can talk to anybody. I can sit there with someone I just met and literally know like 45% of their life because I'm just so talkative with them and then they start to trust me. And I remember I just told God, I can talk. Like that is one thing that I know I have. And then Mike Todd was like, now give that one thing to God and tell him to use it. And so I
Right.
So amen. I prayed that and I said, God, I can speak. That's the one thing I know that I have for sure. And then literally a year later, I got a microphone. Like someone literally gifted me a microphone for a podcast. Like randomly, I walked into my friend's house and I told him I needed a microphone and he let me have his. And it was like my friend's brother. And so when you say like, look at the giftings that you already have, like maybe this isn't just specifically for a call for missionary, but it's like even a call to a pastor. Like, do you have a heart that is constantly compassionate and caring towards others?
Mhm.
Like, do you enjoy listening when people are like sharing their life to you and you're good at giving advice? Like maybe you're called to be a pastor, you
Right.
know? And so I like that you said like identify the giftings. You never think like my giftings are a part of my call, because maybe you have a prophetic gift, but then it's like, where can you go? God can use that. And so I think that's really good. How do you think you can go about using your giftings? I guess Holy Spirit is leading us there. How do you think you can go about your giftings, like where you are? Like how can you start? We'll get into like where you've gone and all that stuff, but like, what about the people that are now where we are? Like, what if somebody's in Florida? Like, how do you go about using that gift that God has given you to your family, to your friends?
Yeah, I think my gifting is in the same way as you, like just being so relatable with people. Um, and so like me going back to Florida this weekend, a lot of people I know that I'll be seeing are not saved. And so where do I like use my giftings in a way to portray the gospel message in a way that they would understand well and not like twisting any type of truth. And
Yeah,
so I believe that's something I use. I know for sure I'm an evangelist. Like I just know God's gifted me in that. Doesn't mean we're not all called to evangelize, but there are some people with that gift. You could tell they can't stop talking about the gospel.
yeah,
And so that's just a gift the Lord has given me. And so and also to like build people up. And so I know I could see myself like even at this wedding, I think it's funny if some of them like actually see this podcast posted. They're like, "Oh, I was at that wedding." No. Anyways, but like just being able to build them up and like meet them
yeah,
where they're at. I don't necessarily think that's a gift. I think that's how we all should be meeting people like Jesus met them where they're at.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, just having that like joy that I have and being able to be relatable of like, hey, I was like in your place, you know this, right? Like I was in the same boat where you are, literally the same county. Like you can have freedom, you can have peace, you can have breakthrough. And so there's that, like if I use it in my hometown, but also with like giftings, whether that's like dance, theater, all those things, like how I was telling you in El Salvador, those people are using the street performance
yeah,
and the drama skit. Do they all feel qualified to do that? Probably not, but they
yeah,
came to do a dance theater. We host a creative arts school here. So people that feel gifting in music, dance, drama, theater, all those things, they came to do a discipleship training school at our base because we're super creative arts focused. And so they've used those gifts and like prophetic drawings and stuff like throughout America and now into El Salvador. And so that's how people can use their gifts is like seeing how like seeing one what the gifts are and two like what are some open doors
yeah,
around them where they could use those things. And so or like even at their church if there's like a certain team or how you can volunteer at your youth group if you feel called to preach, ask somebody to disciple you and
yeah,
ask for opportunities. If you feel like you have a word burning on your heart like a prophetic word, talk to your leaders and ask like what what is this, or like is this something the youth could use in this moment? Or if you have a singing ability and you really just want to like praise God with that singing ability, maybe talk to the worship leader and say, hey, I feel this call. And like I was helping Pioneer Church down the road and I was helping them with worship. And this girl was saying how she likes to sing and she wants to like lead worship. And so just like encouraging her in that. And now she leads the whole team like down the
no
street. Then
way,
like a year or so process of her, she would always sing like very slow, like very like you gotta put the mic up, you gotta
yeah,
like sing, you have a voice and just speaking truth that removes the lies. And she's not like fire, like she's so amazing because she's like using her gift. She's loudly singing, proclaiming God, and
Yeah.
not allowing the enemy to just like kind of close that gift. And so I think you can even tell what some of your giftings are of like, what's the enemy trying to really stop you in, you know?
Yeah. That's
So,
crazy because I get so discouraged with the podcast so often. Like
mm,
it's crazy. I don't get discouraged in life areas so much like I do with the podcast. And I always see God's hand over it. And every time I start getting discouraged, God reminds me of the story of like, didn't I give you the microphone? Didn't I, am I not the one that literally said, go ahead and do this? And then when I get discouraged, God gives me like someone that comes like through a DM or like a YouTube comment or something like that, going like, oh my gosh, this helped me so much. And so I agree, like where you're called is where the enemy ends up like trying to make you think that you're not qualified, but God
right,
literally qualifies the unqualified.
right.
Um, I love, I love this so much that you said that you're going to a wedding and your mind is like, how can I bring somebody to Jesus? Because
Oh,
you know
100%.
that that is a heart of a missionary. I always go back to Toronto because like I go there to go visit my family and stuff like every couple months. And then I come back here and my mind is always, how can I bring the love of God to my parents? How can I refresh them with Jesus's love? Like how can I serve them in the like literally couple days that I'm there? And that
Mhm.
is the heart of a disciple of Jesus.
Yes,
Jesus never went somewhere without a purpose. And
it's
I know
true.
that like people sometimes are like, oh, I'm there on vacation, I'm there on vacation. But like Jesus did not stop, you know? Jesus did not stop. And a vacation is an amazing opportunity to share the gospel. Anywhere you go is an amazing opportunity to share the gospel. So I love that like
Mhm.
you're going there with a mission and with a purpose. So let's dive in a little bit on like, because we were talking in the beginning of what if somebody wants to go and they're like called to a missions trip, or they're called to join YWAM. I know a lot of like people are called to they go to YWAM because like it goes everywhere in the world,
Yeah.
have a lot of bases. And so what if like you're like, no, like I can't, I'm discouraged, I don't have the money. Like how you through like your stories and like through testimonies of God providing and your own fear, do you get through like those kind of situations?
Yeah, I think hearing people in DTS, discipleship training school, you have a one-on-one, which is like a person that's there to like disciple you. But one of my staff members kept telling me about money and God's gonna provide, God's got it. Like, have faith, you're gonna see God move, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I still owe money for my school.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that owes money still. And the way I started getting money towards my DTS was I spoke at my church. And so that's another thing too, like start building relationships around you and asking the
Yeah.
Lord. Like when you ask people for support, it's like they're actually getting this reward as well in heaven. And so seeing the bigger picture, if you don't ask people, you're robbing them of that blessing to bless you because it's a blessing to bless people.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, back to the girl, she kept reminding me like God's gonna provide, like you're gonna grow in your faith. And I'm like, I'm still the only one with like $700 left that I owe. And then after coming back from overseas, this is just a testimony to encourage anybody. I still owed like 720 bucks for my DTS. And then they're talking about DBS, which is our Bible school, which is $3,500. I'm like, I
Gosh.
cannot do that. Like, I have car payment, I have all these things. I have to leave Boston, right?
Yeah.
And then when we get back, there's like this giving day. And they're talking about this like daycare in a nation I can't mention, but not daycare. That's so funny. Talking about some schooling thing in this nation. And I had like $1 to give. I was like, okay, I'll give the dollar on my dresser, right? Literally, once I committed that dollar in my heart, somebody gave this paper to me and says, I want to commit $1,000 to your DBS. And I was like,
My
what?
gosh.
It gets better. So I still owe, remember, like 700 something dollars. Basically, my staff members go up on the mic and say, we want to give $3,000 towards your Bible school, my Bible school. And then in the meantime, too, my friend came up and like gave me, I think, what, $200. And so, sorry, if you do the math, the school was only 3,500. The people that gave 3,000 thought I owed 4,000 for the school. Anyways, they overgave, but low key they didn't,
God.
because doing the math, I still owed $700. My friend gave $200.
Yeah.
I had $500 extra for my DBS. Five, six, $700. Boom. DTS and my Bible school was covered in the same day.
Wow.
And I'm like, there's
Wow.
no way. And so when I was really met with discouragement of like, I have to leave Boston, and I really thought I was supposed to do the Bible school, right? God came through, and I've been living off of monthly support for, I think, about 3 years now. And like my supporters, I have a small group of maybe like 8 people that give monthly. And it's knowing what it's like having like nothing, but also not settling for bare minimum just because you're a
Yeah.
missionary.
Yeah.
Like you need to have food on the table. You need to have your rent covered. Like I still have rent. I still have all these things to pay, but God's will, God's bill is actually a real thing, because if He's
Yeah.
called you to it, He's going to provide radically. And He's given me dreams of people giving and then literally getting a
Wow.
check the next week or so. And I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah.
So just so random. And it also gives me so much joy, like giving to other people too, because it's not out of a lack of need or a lack of want. It's a lack of just like an abundance, even
Yeah.
having not as much as you would think, I
Yeah.
guess. So,
Yeah. So I'm in seminary now, right? And like the seminaries at my church, they're known to be like broke during seminary. And then when you get out of seminary, you have to like get yourself back on your feet. It's
mm,
not like encouraged to get a job when you're in seminary, because it's like 2 years that you're basically on like a honeymoon with Jesus. So like you're
right.
experiencing a lot of like prayer, like everyday prayer, every day you're serving the church, every day you're this. We got really lucky with my class because we went to Paraguay on a mission trip last year, and then me and another person are going to Mexico with a pastor and his wife, literally in like a week and a half. So we got really lucky with our class, because some of us like are trying to find the means, but God is still providing for us to go. And I
Right.
think it's like when you determine, I am going because I believe this is from God, is when you start seeing the miracles. You know,
Right.
I think that being a missionary is one of the callings that you see like a lot. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was reading today in Acts, and it's Acts 22, I believe. And it's when Paul is kind of like evangelizing and explaining his testimony. And then at the end, the guy says, "You're appointed to see the righteous one. You're appointed to tell
Mm-hmm.
of everything you've seen and heard." And then I
Yep.
always ask God, like, God, if we're called to see things, that we're called to say things that we've seen and heard, like, I want to see things, I want to
Mm-hmm.
hear things. And financial testimonies is kind of like one of the biggest things that I've experienced in my life. But like you said, it's learning to accept the lack and being
Mm-hmm.
content in the lack. You know, because
Yep.
when I went to Paraguay, we needed 1,200, I think. And I had $1,200, period. Like I didn't have extra spending money. I had nothing. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
it. And I only got that money when I made it to the airport to go there. And so
That's crazy.
when you're called, even if you don't have, when God is like, because it says that faith is what moves the heart of God, you know?
Right.
And there's also the story of Stephen, I think it's Stephen or Stephen, when he was in front of the council. And what did he do? He started to share the
Mm-hmm.
gospel, started to share the story of God. And it says that Jesus stood up on his seat because he was so moved, you know, like Jesus is sitting on the seat, but for him, he stood up. And it's by our faith when we walk and we're like, okay, I'm gonna go regardless of if I have money or not. Like God is gonna provide, you know? And so, yeah, I think that that's really good, that you need to take the faith for God's will to be God's will. You know, like where is God calling you? What is he calling you to do? Because if you don't know, then you're walking blindly. How is he gonna provide? You know what I mean? I mean, he provides anyways. one thing that I do want to say is that, like, before I ask the other question, probably the last question too, is that like community is essential, like you
So
said that it was your church that decided to fund it to you. It was people that you asked. When I went to Paraguay, I literally asked on my Instagram. I was like, is anybody able to offer? Is anybody able to help sponsor? And I had people in the community on my Instagram that were able to sponsor. So I think community is also really important. But I know that it's scary to ask people for money, but when you have like the revelation that it's for a kingdom purpose and it's just a necessity that you need to get you where to go, it's a lot easier to ask. But to transition into something else, do you have any like testimonies or anything that you want to share about your mission trips? Because I know you've gone to a lot of places, and I think maybe someone listening might be even thinking, like, what's the purpose? What's the point of going through asking people for money or going through the spiritual battle that even comes before going on a mission trip or the spirit or that comes while you're there? Like, what's the point? And I know as missionaries, you guys experience a lot of salvation, healing, deliveries, like a lot of things. So what if somebody is thinking like, what's the point? What's like a story you have that's like, let me tell you why it's worth it, why it's worth going.
yeah, I remember some guy commented on a TikTok video and was like, why it was the trend that was going on. Like, if one person gave $1, like I would have, or this many people gave $1, I would have money for this. And so I was like, oh, missionary trend, we could pay off of outreach, right? Because, God's going and reaching those
Yeah.
people. And some guy commented, it was like, why don't we just send the money to the people there? And I was like, that does make sense, but it also doesn't make sense because a reason why a place is unreached is because there's not people there that are sharing with other people. And so maybe there could be like one believer there that we would be able to meet and encourage. But there's also something powerful about traveling all this way, and then people are
Yeah.
like, something must be important. If you're like, a lot of like the terminology sometimes missionaries will hear of like, no one's ever visited us before, or like no one's ever came to our village, no one's
Yeah.
ever like cared to be here. Why would you be here, like getting sick, getting bit by mosquitoes, getting this disease? But it's because we have this upper call to stay focused on. That's a Bible verse too. I can't think of the reference, but it's like staying focused on this upward call of the Lord,
Yeah.
of God. If I find that, I'll send it to you later. But yeah, I think hearing those type of wordings of like no one's visited here, and I feel like sometimes too, like foreigners really have this like ability to be able to like share, and when you go to these villages, you can't just straight up talk about Jesus because it's not allowed,
Yeah.
like Christianity is just not allowed. And so the way you'd go is like kind of sharing about your life in America, and you'll show photos of like, this is my family, this is my dog or something,
Mhm.
and then you ask them, like, you kind of start sharing your testimony a bit, and then you ask them permission of like, is it okay if I tell you about this man named Jesus? And then that's when you share, because Jesus is the same here in America as he is overseas or in other
Yeah.
places, um, or in the United States and other parts of South America, North America, like all these places. Um, and so, yeah, I think some testimonies I was thinking of is like, something that came to my mind was I had a lot of fear. Um, I just was like always like needing to go to the hospital. My mom would be like, "You're a hypochondriac," all these things. I always thought something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I'd be so scared of snakes, like living in Florida. I would be like literally petrified of these things. And when I found out we were going to this specific nation, I was like, what? Like, you're what? Like, there's no way. And I was like feeling this fear rise up. But to encourage people that have fear, it's like I was hours away from any type of decent hospital in some like foothills of the Himalayan mountains. God
Yeah.
broke off my fear of all those things. And so if you have this fear, like allow him to work on you in that
Yeah.
area. And like, yeah, why would we go to these places if it's like not safe? Whatever. But because I know what God did in my life, and if no one's ever told me about Jesus, like if I never would have watched that video, someone showed me in person, like I don't know where I would be. And I don't want to even entertain that thought of like where
Yeah.
I would be. And so yeah, just like in the midst of fear, you're gonna see God heal your fear and like deliver you from fear, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and really show up. And now that I have those like moments overseas, it's like, wow, God is faithful and He is able to do more than we can ask, think, or imagine.
Yes.
Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but one, why would we do that? Because He is worthy. Because I know what He's done in my life, and it's not gonna like stop me. It's gonna actually push me forward to even share with more people, whether they want to hear it or not. Our responsibility is just to share. And two, if you have like fear and stuff, God's got it. Stay focused on Him. Kind of like Peter walking on water. It's like when he looked at the wave, what was going on, you know,
Yeah.
fell. So I could have focused on a lot of things when I was overseas, but really I was just caught up in the will of God and caught up in what He was up to. And it was awesome. Like in the midst of right sickness or in the midst, personally, I did not get sick overseas. Well, at this nation, I got car sick a lot because they drive literally insane. Um, my mom will never see those videos of that situation. So, but yeah, that answers the question a bit.
Yeah. That's so good. I think right at the beginning you had mentioned like it's you didn't say it in these words, but like what I got from it was like it's for a higher calling, you know.
Yes.
It's not about us, you know,
No.
it's not about us. I when you have your eyes set on the Lord and you notice that it's all for him, all for his glory, your fear like leaves, you know.
Yes.
It's terrifying to go up to somebody, especially here in Florida, because I feel like their hearts are a little bit colder than I experienced in Toronto. Because here it's more of a richer nation, I guess. And
Mhm.
so if you have riches, like it says in the Bible that it's easier for a camel to go through a needle than a rich man to go to heaven. And
Mm.
that's because like people get dependent on money, right?
Yeah.
And so it's scary to go up to somebody here in Florida and be like, hey, I have somebody that like loves you and this, but it's worth it when you know it's for God. You know, the rejection is worth it when you're not doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for something that's higher than yourself. And
Mm.
I think that's a really good, not mindset, but like perspective to look at it as like it's for the Lord, onto the Lord, through the Lord. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. But all of it is for the
So
Lord.
true.
And so I think that that's really, really good, you know, um, especially your story, like that's crazy. But God also uses sometimes your fears to overcome your fears, you know. You were
Yeah.
scared and he was like, actually, you're gonna go right there, you know? And
Yeah.
so that's a way
And the
that,
hospitals weren't even a hospital. Like,
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. And that's how good God is, you know, and he uses all things. And he uses our fears, he uses our strong suits, he uses our weaknesses.
weakness.
And yeah, that's amazing. So just to close, do you have like a piece of advice um to somebody that's desiring to be a missionary, feels like they have
Mm.
the call and they're like ready to get sent out, but they're just like, oh my gosh, like I can't, I think this is wrong. Like I don't have the finances, like everything is just going wrong, you know, that spiritual battle before you go. Um, yeah, do you have a last piece of advice? And then you can actually do like a little brief summary of YWAM, and then maybe I could put the link to YWAM down below, just in case
Yeah.
anybody does feel a call through this episode to do YWAM, you know?
Yeah. Oh, this is so sweet. I just think of people that could hear this. I would say God sees your heart. I think something you could have like this heart to go into the mission field, and then you're worried, like, is it just because of this? Is it because of that? Or like because everybody's doing it?
Yeah.
But I would say just like check your heart. Is what you're doing to like be seen by other people, or is it because it's like this trendy thing right now, blah blah blah. One, God can use anything, but
Yeah.
God sees your heart, and He's going to guide you. The way God will guide you is one through confirmation of His word. He's going to guide you. Maybe some people around you won't understand why you're doing what you're doing. Before I left for mission school, people were like, "You're gonna like, you have a car payment. No, no, like you're not gonna have any money. Why would you be doing that?" And those voices, I kind of just like silenced out a bit, because in Lauren Cunningham's book, Is That Really You, God? His uncle like promised him like, hey, I'll give you this really good job, like, you can make a lot of money. Just don't go do that mission dream that you have, right?
Wow. Lauren,
Lauren Cunningham,
is that
yes,
you?
he,
I want to read it.
yeah, Is That Really You, God? I'm
Okay.
actually gonna make a reel soon about the book.
Woohoo. But anyways,
Um,
yeah, so you were saying like he got all this money and
Well, he was had these promises, like his uncle was like, please don't go. Like, I'll give you
yeah,
this job so that you can be secure, all these things. But Lauren Cunningham went with the word from God, and he's seen like out like, oh my gosh, like his reward has to be like so massive in
yeah,
heaven because of his one man's obedience. All these people
yeah,
are getting radically saved. And YWAM bases are being planted throughout the world, and people are going out. But yeah, that would be my advice to you. Check your heart, ask the Lord,
yeah.
what is it that you have for me? What is my mission field currently? If you're in high school, middle school, please go preach the gospel to
Yeah.
somebody. Go just talk to them, talk to the person you think is totally fine. Because that was me in high school. I was like, I had it together. Girl, I had nothing together. I needed Jesus so bad. Um, but yeah, that would be my encouragement is checking your heart, asking the Lord, what do you have for me? Because I believe
Yeah.
God will to you specific things. And you'll end up in places you didn't expect to end up in. Um, and yeah, just ignore the voice of the enemy. You're gonna hear things
And
like, oh, she's doing this thing now, she's doing that. But like you got a word from the Lord.
yeah.
God's got you,
Yes.
and He's going to do more than you can ever ask, think, or imagine. And yeah, just be where you're at in this moment, and it could all change like in an
And
instant. So yeah, that would be my little tidbit of advice. And then I would say for the rundown of Youth with a Mission, there are a lot of bases throughout the world. There's some really cool ones in
yeah.
Brazil. Um, but yeah, I mean, I can personally only speak of the base that I'm at here in Boston, why I'm in Boston. Why I'm Kona is also pretty awesome. From the things that I've heard from friends. YWAM is not like what's the word? It's not ran by one person, although Lauren Cunningham founded the ministry.
Hmm.
Every base has its own like director or leader. And so you'll probably hear a lot of stories online and stuff. And just know that every YWAM base is different.
Okay.
It's good to hear sources from other people, like their experiences. And then there's also like, I have no like understanding of Christ for the Nations and stuff like that, but I have heard really good things about Christ
Yeah.
for the Nations. So that's another thing you could like look into. I personally would love to go because I see some people that are there and they're like fire. It's so awesome. But yeah, if you go ywam.org, I think pulls up all the things and type in specific things. If you like to dance, if you like music things, if you're gifted in musical instruments, like they have certain schools that you could do with them. Or even talk to your like missions pastor at your church if there is one. If there's not, maybe it's
My
you
church
one
does
day.
not have one.
Really?
Yeah, we don't have a missions pastor. I've never heard of that.
I don't know. it's important to have,
I think so, yeah. A team going.
but yeah, like when I heard the stats in my training school, we had missions week, and there was like this amount of money is given towards missions, the mission field. I was like, that's like, oh, the thing they said was people spend more money, give money towards dog food than sending missionaries out to the mission field. And I heard
Yeah,
that, I was like, it's crazy. But I'm sure maybe things have changed now because it's
yeah,
like a big revival movement happening. But yeah, also if anyone has any questions about missions or advice about things, like I'm always available
yeah,
to like help in what I can. Um, and pray with people, whatever. Some people don't have a mentor, I can help
yeah.
them find people or just encourage them, right? But yeah, it's been
Yes.
awesome.
So if any of you guys want to find Abigail, I'm gonna put her Instagram below so that way you guys can reach out to her. I have a lot of women who end up reaching out after the episodes who ask for advice. So if there's anything mission-based related, I will send them to you so that way you can encourage them and increase their faith, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a missionary, but I don't think I have as much experience as you do. So I'll definitely send them your way. And what else? Just a last minute announcement.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys feel on your heart, I have a link down below that you guys can send an offering to. And I actually said last week that I was thinking about finding a mission kind of camp or base, something like that, where I can send a portion of the offerings to, because I don't want to just keep the money. Like I want to bless other people with it. So if you guys do feel like sending out an offering, you can down below, and that would be amazing. You guys will be helping me as well as maybe like a mission field that I find. But do you want to just pray us out, Abigail?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Jesus, I thank you so much for each person listening to this, Lord. And we acknowledge that your will is for all to come to know you and come to salvation, Lord, in every sphere of society, Lord, whether that's education field, media field, um, family sphere, all those things, Lord, you want to show up and show out in those areas, God. And I just pray a blessing over each person listening to this, Lord, if they feel pulled towards missions, God, that you would guide them and that you would make their path straight, Lord, that you provide everything that they need, Lord, in Jesus' name. Sorry. And God, I ask for your trip too, coming up soon. You leave in like a week. God, would you
Yes.
continue to provide an abundance, Lord, salvation, souls being saved. God, we ask for the impossible to be done, Lord, because you said greater works that we will do, Lord, and greater works that will accompany those who love him and in his disciples, God. And yeah, I thank you for this time and whatever has us like whatever's burning in our hearts, Lord. I ask that you would um just bring those desires to
And
the forefront and allow us to ask those big questions, Lord. What is it that you have planned for me? Who is it that I could share the gospel to this week? And I encourage, just ask the Lord like 2 people to go share the gospel this week with. um and just like go for it.
man,
Pray for them, preach the gospel to them. And yeah, we just thank you so much. We'll never fully know probably the fruit of this call, but Lord, I thank you that your reward and our reward is great in heaven. In Jesus' name, amen.
you want to know something crazy? So we were
Hmm.
talking about like the whole thing of like when you get discouraged and like if you should go or not. I promise I'm gonna share the story and then I'm gonna close it. But I thought I got like a job, so that way I like working Tuesday to Friday. But before I came here, God told me I'm not supposed to work consecutively. I'm supposed to walk on water until I finish seminary. And then I was like, oh, but this job will provide me money to go for the trip, whatever. And I just got a message and I knew, like, I felt in my heart I wasn't supposed to take it. And I just
Hmm.
got a message, and I was supposed to be working Tuesday to Friday, and it was babysitting. And I was just told that her grandparents came in, so she won't need me for a couple weeks. And so
You
now,
just got a message.
yes, that's what I was like doing. Like I was trying to figure that out on the side. And now I need to depend on God's grace yet again, on his supernaturalness. So I'm gonna see a testimony. I'm saying that right now, I'm gonna see a testimony.
In Jesus' name. In radical ways too. And
Man, I believe
oh,
it.
I'm so excited.
I
Amen.
believe it.